Next is going to be a social media manager. This is a gig that you can also offer on Fiverr, and there's a lot of different social media management related gigs you can offer. So for instance, you could make a content calendar for somebody. You could make some content for their Instagram account. You could make a certain type of carousel that they want. You could edit their video in a certain way that looks really good on Instagram. All kinds of different gigs out there. One that got really popular lately, Dan Co, kind of like this black and white type of Instagram style that got extremely popular, and people that were offering that as a gig on Fiverr made a ton of money from it. So that would be one example of what you can do. Now, social media managers in general make about $52,000 to $82,000 a year, so it's just a really good career in general to go into, and it's just a really good skill set to learn. But you can also make a ton of money with social media management related stuff on Fiverr, and the best thing about this is if you're young and you grew up using social media, that's pretty much all you need because you already understand social media on a much deeper level than older people. So you're probably gonna be extremely good at this job. So yeah, this one's really good. Lots of different gigs related to this. I'll give this one like a 9 out of 10 opportunity score. Next is going to be a slideshow presentation creator. So this could be something like a pitch deck or a slideshow or some way of pitching people on buying your product or investing or something along those lines. And if you don't think you can make money from this, there's this 33-year-old that brought in $2 million making PowerPoints, okay? So she was literally just making PowerPoint presentations for people, right? And she was just doing freelance work on these different freelance websites. So you can definitely make money by doing this, creating different PowerPoint presentations and that kind of thing. Of course, as always, I know I feel like a broken record, but you want to niche down, you want to specialize. So definitely look out at the market, look at which ones are getting the most attention, look at which ones are able to charge the highest, which freelancers are able to make the most money. Also look at the needs of the market as well. And yeah, that can be really good. So this one, I'm gonna go ahead and give a 9 out of 10 opportunity score. Another one you could consider doing is pitch decks as well, which is slightly different, but it's kind of the same thing. And by the way, if you wanna learn how to get more into this type of thing, like using pitch decks, sales pitches, presentation for, PowerPoint presentations, that kind of thing, the easiest way to get into sales and actually make a ton of money right off the bat is getting into what's known as tech sales. I've actually interviewed a bunch of people on this channel that my business partners have actually helped to get into tech sales themselves. And it's a super easy career to get into. You don't need a college degree, you don't need previous experience. And sales in general is one of the most valuable skill sets you could possibly learn. So it's a great one to get into. And if you want some free training on that, I'll put that down in the description as well as the pinned comment below. And you can check out the free training down there. All right, so next is image background removal and related gigs to it. So for instance, you might remove the background on a particular product and then you might, Photoshop some shadows behind it or something like that to make it look really good. Lots of different gigs doing this. AI recently has gotten incredibly good at removing backgrounds. Before, like even 2 years ago, it was not very good at doing it. And now it's incredibly good at doing it. And it's basically as good as a human who basically goes in like hours at a time and removes at 1 pixel at a time. It's basically as good as a human doing that at this point. So you can actually earn a ton of money doing this, and there's a lot of need for it as well out in the market. I remember a few years ago, I paid like $500 to some guy to remove a bunch of, remove the background from a bunch of pictures for me for thumbnails. So yeah, this is a really good one. Might get saturated relatively quickly because there's a lot of tools out there to do it. So remove.bg, for instance. So yeah, image background removal. I'll give this one a 7 out of 10 opportunity score. Next is podcast writing. So this is basically where you write different kinds of outlines for what people should talk about on different podcasts. So this isn't necessarily writing word for word what they should say, because that would actually be kind of difficult. But in some cases, maybe they would want you to write it word for word. But what it really is basically just giving them an outline to go through so that they just know what they should talk about next every time. So for instance, if they're going over a bunch of different news events, you almost create like a newsletter or an outline for them to just go down the list and talk about these different things.
If your video is a challenge, I just spent 24 hours doing it. The only way this suffering wasn't in vain is if you subscribe.
And maybe you insert a few of your own points and perspectives here and there, and they can maybe talk about them or maybe not talk about them. And so, yeah, this can be really good. Podcast writers in general make about $68,000 to $119,000 a year. And there's a lot of basically need on the market for this position. And there's not a lot of people out there that can do it. So if you're someone who likes to listen to podcasts a lot, this can be a really good one. And I am starting to see more and more gigs related to it. So I'm gonna give podcast writing an 8 out of 10 opportunity score. All right, so a few boring ones. I'm gonna go over these really quickly because you guys probably already know them, but they're honestly still pretty good. Proofreading and editing. I know nobody wants to do proofreading, nobody wants to do editing, but there's still a lot of opportunity out there, and there's a lot of people that look for this type of thing. And if you can do a good job on it, I know it's boring, but you can make a good amount of money. So this lady, for instance, makes about $46 an hour with her proofreading side hustle. Proofreaders in general make about $45,000 to $68,000 a year. Not the sexiest side hustle to do, but there is a lot of gigs out there for this. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it an 8 out of 10 opportunity score. Another one that, again, is not the sexiest side hustle ever, but you can make money doing it, is data entry. So there's still some types of data that you have to manually enter in, even though AI is getting really good. Maybe you have AI do it first and then you double check the AI just to make sure it didn't make any mistakes. But there are still a lot of data entry related gigs out there. And I'd say AI has actually increased the amount of freelance opportunities when it comes to data entry, because it has been streamlining and getting rid of some data entry jobs, but that just means that instead of hiring somebody full time, they might hire a freelancer for it. And so yeah, data entry is still relatively good. I'll give this one a 6 out of 10 opportunity score. Next one is going to be a fact-checking gig. So this is becoming more and more common. People, especially in the United States, are basically not trusting of the news at all, and probably for very good reason, because the news constantly lies to them. It's just a pretty much undisputed fact. If you look at the data, pretty much nobody trusts the news.
I trusted you.
And there are different efforts out there to fact check things. Sometimes people might wonder if you would want to fact check the fact checkers, but there are a lot of gigs out there for this type of thing. Fact checking and just making sure that information is correct. And fact checkers in general, just for a job, make about $57,000 to $100,000 a year. But fact checking on Fiverr is something that is popping up. It's a new and developing niche, because let's be honest, you probably don't need to hire someone full time to fact check, but you might want to hire someone for a gig to fact check some things. So this can be a pretty good one to get into. I'll go ahead and give it a 7.5 out of 10 opportunity score. Yeah, and these are some of the ones that I've seen lately have been growing, and I just see a lot of demand in the market for these. So definitely check these out.